ready to get started. Key features of an approvable continuous improvement plan. So there are two things I want to distinguish before we get started. The first thing is that every school that has a designation, including ATSI, should be writing a continuous improvement plan. I know that we approve the district plan, but each school should still have a continuous improvement plan as monitored by the district. The second thing is our type. So we kind of went back and forth with the word good plan, effective plan, and we stuck with the word approvable because we're not the people that decide if it's effective. We're not the people that decide if it's good. It's those little bodies that come in and sit on seats and you look at their data, they'll make that decision and give you the indication if your plan is good, effective. We're the people that decide if your plan is approvable. Here's our agenda. State the goal and importance, continuous improvement plan, alignment, monitoring for impact, approvability, and the process of approval. But before we get started, let's meet the team.
I'm Glennis Brooks, and my districts are Chester, Fairfield, all the Lexingtons, Richland 1, and all the Yorks.
Good afternoon, I'm Teresa Gamble, and my districts are all of those. I'm Dr. Jennifer Ganam, and I serve the South Carolina Charter School.
Good afternoon, I'm Faye Gordon, and I serve districts from Orangeburg to Aiken.
Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Bentley Oates, and I serve Georgetown, Beaufort, Dorchester 2, 4, Horry, Lee, Sumter, and it seems like there's a lot more. But I really enjoy this position because I wasn't at a CSI school, so I was sitting in the seat you are, and and now I'm here, and I really do enjoy it.
Hello, my name is David Long. I am mostly responsible for the areas in the upstate region, Anderson, Cherokee, Spartanburg districts, Greenville, Oconee, Pickens.
Good afternoon, I'm Otis Reed. I serve the Charter Institute at Erskine and the Limestone Charter Association.
And it's me again. I'm Denise Colbert Wilson. I serve the district listed here, Florence 1, Allendale, Jasper, Charleston, McCormick, Colleton, and Williamsburg. And our official title is School Improvement Manager. And I think in the last session she was talking about the questions that we asked. I think she hit it right on the head. How many of you have heard those questions from us? Nobody's heard the question of how does this relate to reading and math? Okay. So if not, yeah, someone in your district has. All right.
The South Carolina Department of Education has a vision, and our vision is that every child is college, career, or military ready. By 2030, at least 75% of students at or above grade level. Now, if you're like me, the first time I looked at that, I was like, oh my goodness. However, if you've been to one of Joey Green's workshops, ATS workshops, they do an activity called the Northern Star. And you can actually see what you have to do each year to meet this goal. And I think if you do that, you'll find that this is attainable. It really goes along with the CIP because you have to have a plan in order to meet goals and to make sure you're going down the right path.
So why is continuous school improvement important? If you've been to one of Joe's sessions, like Ben Lee was just talking about, you've seen this map before. Does anybody remember what the blue dots are? Come on, I've seen a lot of those faces at these meetings. Thank you. So what we have is a lot of designations in our state. So we've got a lot of schools that are on continuous improvement plans. You know, several years ago, I was having a conversation with a principal about continuous school improvement. And she said, you know what? We don't actually do any of y'all's State Department continuous school improvement stuff because we're not on one of your lists. And I said, well, the continuous school improvement is really for everybody. You know, it's just good practice, right? It's making sure that all students are improving every day. It's just making sure that all your subgroups are moving forward, just checking in with everybody, and not to be, you know, bearer of bad news, but that particular school is an ATSI school now. And I truly feel like if that particular principal had been watching and paying attention to that data, that probably wouldn't happen. So, as Denise said earlier, ATSI, CSI, priority schools, we're all working on a plan right now. I personally feel like all schools in general should write some sort of plan every year, just to make sure you know what the goals are. You know, here's where we are, here's where we want to be, how are we going to make those goals? You may not necessarily get particular funds to reach those goals, but you've got money. You know, you're getting money from somewhere to fund your school. It may not be earmarked specifically, but the purpose of school is to ensure high levels of learning for all students. And if we're not intentional in writing a specific plan for that, what are we doing?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what the continuous improvement plan is. First of all, you've all seen the template. We'll open that up in a minute if the link works. Cross your fingers. Okay, but the purpose of the continuous improvement plan is to, number one, target specific areas of improvement. Now, whether that be a specific subject or a specific subgroup, but you're looking at targeting those specific areas of improvement. Secondly, it's the progress monitoring tool. Once we look at it, when you get down to phase 5 and phase 6, that is all about progress monitoring. Not only the students, but also your activities. You're looking at those things and thinking about were they effective or not, and what do you need to do differently. And the third thing is it serves as a planning document for your funding application. Many of you know, especially if you go back and do amendments and you have your CIP done, and you go and make an amendment, we'll say, well, in order for us to approve this, you have to go back and make those same changes that you made on your CIP to GEMS and vice versa. Those have to match. So anytime you make any changes, those things go together because the plan is your guiding document for your application in GEMS. And can you click on the link to see if that opens for us? If it doesn't, we'll just walk through a little. Anyway. Is that right? We can talk through it. So phase 1 of the, I know you've all seen, how many of you have not seen a continuous improvement template? If you haven't seen it before, so everybody's familiar with it. So in phase 1, that's your diagnosis phase. That's where you look at the data. You can use report card data, but should that be the only data you look at when you're trying to do your plan? No, okay, you have to think about, just like with Title I is a comprehensive needs assessment, you think about all the data that you would use to determine the things that's going to help your school no longer be in school improvement. So when you diagnose, you're looking at all your data and you're trying to figure out what the students need to be successful. And phase 2, the select and plan phase. And we kind of switch them around. Think you choose your goals and then you choose the activities to go along with those goals. With the goal, of course, that has to be what kind of goal? It has to be a SMART goal. Yeah, you can't just say we want to approved student scores in ELA. Okay, it has to be measurable, it has to be timely, and have all of that specific information in order for it to be a SMART goal. And then, of course, you have to align the activities to go along with that goal. Okay, so you might see something come back if you have your goal is to improve ELA scores, but you don't have everything in that in those activities that align with that. Sometimes you may see something come back if you're asking for a lot of material or supplies. So just making sure that whatever your goal is, that your activities are aligned with that. Okay, once you move to phase 4 and phase 5, that's where we're talking about your monitoring and your implementing. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? And then once you have done that, when are you going to monitor these students? And this is what I always say. One of the resources that the State Department has is the and I think you saw it, you were in the last session, is there is a process guide, and it tells you things that you need to do up front before you start actually building your plan. You should have a team going through, talking through how often are we going to monitor this activity. You don't wait until you're in the middle of the activity to decide those things. So up front, you can start talking about, if we're going to do this activity, say you're going to do it already, how often are we going to monitor student progress to make sure it's effective? So those are the things you need to do up front and have those in place to evaluate your program. And then at the end, you revise it. Did this work or did it not? Do we need to make some changes or do we need to scrap it all together? And one of the other things I wanted to mention is once you have that template, if you would click on, there's some tabs at the bottom, and there is a whole instruction guide before you get to the actual template, and it lays out for you. Because sometimes you might ask, well, what do they mean by resource inequity? What do they mean by this? There's that tab gives you the instructions, and it gives you information about each section of the template.
Before we even talk about this slide, I'd like for you to take a moment to turn to your partner and explain to them why you or your school do a comprehensive needs assessment. Why do you do a comprehensive needs assessment? I would like to share why they do a comprehensive needs assessment. Oh, there's some good conversation. And does anyone want to share why they do a comprehensive needs assessment? We will identify the school's needs. And you gotta know what they are and you're gonna address them. Say that one more time. You gotta know what they are and you're gonna address them. You have to know what they are and you're gonna address them.
We were talking about how a comprehensive needs assessment is comprehensive. You're taking all of the needs of that school and you're looking at it from a comprehensive. So you're not isolating Title I, Title II, Title III, ATSI. You're looking at the needs of that school, the needs that those children need to be able to be successful. And from there you build a plan so that you can then go back and see who can fund what.
So I know you said a lot, and let me tell you what stood out to me. We're looking at the needs of students, not the needs how we spend our money. So that's what I heard. I heard Title I, Title II, I heard all that, but I feel like we're looking at the needs of students. So before anybody else? All right, so we'll shift on to why we talk about why we do a comprehensive needs assessment. But I want us to think about, there was a statement that I read the other day that the first step in school improvement is to do a comprehensive needs assessment. If you skip that, you're navigating the ship in unknown territory because you don't know exactly where your destination is. So with a comprehensive needs assessment, you get a chance to look at the data and you get a chance to dive deeply into what students truly need. What's causing your data to look this way? All right? You want to shift that over to your goals and your activities, and you evaluate the activities for effectiveness. So if your continuous improvement plan is not aligned with your comprehensive needs assessment, then guess what? We're off somewhere. My uncle made a joke last night. He said, you need to be like Honda on one accord. So we're looking at the SMART goals as well. All right. Are your SMART goals aligned with your continuous improvement plan? Do you have goals that are SMART? And I think Teresa hit it right on the head when she said, we're going to increase reading, period. Reading what? You're going to increase reading instructional time. You're going to increase reading scores. You're going to increase, what are you increasing and where did you start and where do you want to end up? And I've seen some plans. We're going to jump 30 points. What's that? Anybody go to plan with that? No, I'm just kidding. Anybody ever heard of that? You want to jump 30 points because such and such says I had to jump 30 points. Is that realistic? Okay. All right. So also aligning your continuous improvement plan with evidence-based interventions and strategies. You want to make sure that your tiers of evidence are strong or moderate. Not that you went to a conference, saw something great, and now you're bringing it back and you want everybody in your district or in that school to purchase it or go to the next conference. You have to really think about, is this evidence-based? And I think there's a little difference between evidence-based and research-based. But I think the big thing here is to see if your school matches with the school that the evidence is coming from. All right? Applicable needs to the student population, of course, and then your funding applications. So whatever you have in your continuous improvement plan should be, and I think we're hitting that for a reason, should also be in your funding application. And I think you all realize that we changed up our routine a little bit this year. We had you all send us a CIP first for approval, even before you go into GEMS. And I find that that's been a whole, it keeps me sane, I'll just say that. All right, and then your funding application. One of the things I want you to think about is, do you take the time at the end of your cycle to say, did it work? Did we get the return on our investment? So that's your continuous improvement plan. Is it aligned? Is it aligned to what students need? Is it aligned to what students need? Is it aligned to what you need to get to that first vision or goal that Bentley shared earlier? So are we going to get to 80% based off of this plan that we presented?
And now we're going to talk about monitoring for growth and impact. For those of you who have already gotten plans approved through us, you know that your MOA and your GAN, they both have an outline of your responsibility as a school, as a district, and even us as a state on how we should monitor our plans for growth and impact. And so in order to do that, Linus and I are going to talk about some things you could be thinking about as a school and as a district to make that monitoring possible.
Thank you. So how are the districts checking in with schools to measure progress? Well, one way could be through data review meetings. And basically what that says is regular meetings with school leaders to analyze achievement, data, and attendance, and teacher performance. School walkthroughs. District leaders visit schools to observe instruction, provide feedback, and ensure alignment with improvement plans. Progress monitoring. Schools submit reports I'm 62 years old, okay? Schools submit reports detailing progress on goals outlined in their CIP. And the last one is coaching and support visits. District instructional coaches or support teams provide on-site assistance, model best practices, and review implementation of strategies. The next one is, how are districts supporting the implementation of all activities to support school improvement, not just CIP? And I have a list. I'm just going to just throw some of these out for you. Leadership development and support, targeted professional development, data-driven decision making and monitoring, instructional coaching and support, student-centered interventions and support. In addition to funding, resource allocation, and compliance.
Right, now she finishes up the district level. Just want to stress that for those of you who do work on the district level, it is important that the districts are monitoring the progress of your school improvement activities throughout your district and in your schools. For those of you who are working on the school level, we're going to talk about some questions that you could be asking yourself and your staff about how you're going to monitor your schools for growth and impact. And we know monitoring is an ongoing thing. It should be happening from day one on until the last day, because we want to make sure that we're making progress with our plans, with our student achievement, with the implementation of our programs that we have identified in our plans. Look at the first question. It says, what data is used to measure student achievement? And I'm sure we all can kind of blurt some out. So just give me some data that we use to measure our student achievement.
Benchmarks at times a year.
Benchmarks, RA, anything else? MAP, EOC, SC Ready. Yeah, we have a lot of data that we could use to measure our student achievement. But look at the second question. Second question asks, how do we do what? Analyze that data. How do we analyze that data? Because in our schools, I'm sure when I worked in the district, we were very data rich. Data coming from every direction. We had assessment data, all types of data, discipline data, all types of stuff. But the question is, how do we analyze that data? And when we get to analyzing that data, that helps us to really see the impact that we are making with our students and in our schools. And another question will be, when do we analyze that data? So look at question number 3. What's the important word there? Utilizing our what? Our PLCs or data meetings or whatever you may call it in your district. We have to have some type of system in place to make sure that we have that we're periodically and frequently analyzing the data within our schools. And if we look at the last question, how are administrators, teachers, and instructional coaches monitoring the implementation of the activities listed in the school improvement plan? So once we take our time, we bring our stakeholders together, we put together a nice plan. As we're monitoring the assessment data, we also need to be monitoring the implementation of our programs, the implementation of our activities, to make sure that we're implementing those activities to fidelity, so that we get the biggest, I like the title of another presentation I heard today, we get the biggest what? Bang for our buck. Yes, thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we did create and develop an approvability document or guidance. And this was a work in the making of school improvement managers and others in our office coming together after reviewing numerous continuous improvement plans to just kind of think about some activities and interventions and strategies that we have seen along the way, and to help us determine whether or not your CIP and your funding applications have activities that are approvable. So we have shared the document. Sometimes you work on something and you work on something because you're trying to reach a certain level of perfection. But we did decide that we would push the document out. And of course, it's a working document. And as we continue to receive and review plans, we will update that document as needed. So if you don't already have access to the approvability guidance or approvability document, if you would let your SIM know, we'll make sure we get it pushed out to you as soon as possible, because it does outline what our office will approve and will not approve. And sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about whether something is allowable or not. And yes, it may be allowable, but not necessarily approvable for our office, because our office does focus on improving schools and school improvement. And so sometimes things may be allowable, but they may not align to your needs assessment. We're looking at whether or not the activities you are requesting that we fund, if that level of intervention is moderate or if it's weak or if it's strong. So we're just making sure that those activities and interventions that you are requesting funding for do align with school improvement. So if you see the document or when you see the document, I'm pretty sure you're going to focus more on the column that has the non-approvable activities. 99.9% of the time, that column lists the activities that our office will not approve. From personnel to supplies to curriculum, just different subtopics. And then we have a column of approvable activities. The second part of the document has what we call questions SIM may ask. And it's just a list of questions maybe for a little bit more detail or to follow up with some of the activities that you've requested in your continuous improvement plan and in your funding application. So, is there anyone who's not seen this document, this approvability guidance? Perfect. So like I said, it is a work in progress, and it is, want to be updated, but we do try to make sure we look at each CIP as it relates to a district, so it's not just a cookie cutter type response or a cookie cutter answer to your request.
Okay, so at this point, we are talking about the approval process. We've talked about the plan, we've talked about continuous improvement. So once we get to this point, what are the steps in getting your CIP approved? So the first thing that's going to happen is that the school improvement manager will send out an email discussing timeline and deadlines for your MOA and or GANs to be signed and approved, and also your CIP uploaded to the link that will be provided. Obviously, before anything can be done, any kind of approvals, revisions, those MOAs and GANs must be signed by your superintendent and sent back to us. And most of the time, we're going to send it to your superintendent, but each of us have a contact that we're going to copy just to let everyone know that those emails have gone out. District plans should be then discussed with your stakeholders in creating your CIP. Your districts would submit the CIP to our school improvement managers for us to review. As we start reviewing the CIPs, if there are questions, we will communicate with you through email or via phone calls, and we'll discuss those revisions. We are here to help you in any of the revisions that you may submit in your CIP. We want to make sure that it's a smooth process for you. Once, if you don't have revisions or the revisions are approved, then we move to the next step. Or maybe we don't. The next step with the CIP, the next step
It's not
with
even
the
up here.
CIP approved
It's something totally up here.
we want to get your documents, your CIP approved, your MOA and or GAN, any kind of supported documents would be uploaded in the related documents in GIMS. So that's this next process that we're talking about is moving into GIMS. So once we get those uploaded, the activities in the CIP should be placed in your GIMS funding application. So those will be uploaded once your district representative is able to load it in GIMS. Once that happens, it has to go to your fiscal representative for approval, and then it would be at your LEA superintendent approval. At that point, when it hits the LEA superintendent, that is when we're notified that your funding application is in GIMS and is ready for our review. At that point, we will review them. There may be some emails back and forth for if we need to make some revisions along the line of our page just talking about the approvability document. That comes into play with the approval of your CIP and your funding application. Once it's completed, we approve the school improvement director. Link is approved, and then your plan is ready to go in GIMS. Again, when you're working in GIMS, please feel free to call, email with questions. If I usually tell the districts I work with, as you're working on your CIP or putting your information in the funding application, and you're just not sure if it's approvable or not, please don't hesitate to call or send us an email, and we can discuss it before it even goes in GIMS if that's helpful for you. That's certainly what we're here for. So once that piece is approved, then we're done with GIMS. And at that point, if you're using federal funds, the ATSI or the CSI, you need to make sure you upload your funds in GAPS. And at that point, we will also approve. And your funding levels in GAPS should match what you have in GIMS. If your numbers are not in the same lines and they don't add up, we'll have to return GAPS to you. Usually we don't have too many issues with that, but that's sort of that last step. And then of course we will continue throughout the year with amendments. And as I discussed earlier, if you amend your plan, you're amending your CIP. So that's sort of the process from step one to throughout the end. But as you know, with amendments, it's always continuous throughout the year. But as I mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions as we're going through this process, phone or email. Thank you.
Information for your school improvement manager. And I'll just leave that up because we can open the floor now for questions for the team if you have any.
You're asked to do CIP and your funding application, right? Continuous improvement plan should be anything that your school is doing to improve at your school. It doesn't matter about funding, regardless of funding. So you should have things in there that may not cost anything. Whatever we are doing so that we can improve our school. But it's also going to include the funding eventually. Because when you write your CIPs at the very beginning, you should just be focusing on what are we doing to improve our school. Then the funding comes out. Oh, this is how much we have. Okay, always look at our goals, we look at our interventions that we have. Where can that money help us with those interventions? So I think somebody said in one of the other meetings, your funding isn't driving your plan is driving your funding. So your CIP should include anything and everything that you're doing, regardless of funding. The funding application is whatever I put in my CIP that required that state funding that came from our office, or whether it included the federal funding that came from our office, that's what gets put in the funding application. So when they say it should match, they're saying whatever you put in your CIP that's going to require that funding, that's what goes in the funding application. But just remember that, and I know it's, why are we doing it if it's the exact same thing? It should not actually be the exact same thing, because your CIP should include anything and everything that you are doing. It could include Title I funding, it could include IDEA funding, it could include anything that you are doing at the school that's going to help you improve. So I put that a little bit of clarification. So any questions for our school improvement managers, or this is a lot. And I know a lot of you get these plans returned and ask questions, and it's frustrating. So we want to help you so that you don't have to. We'd rather help you on the front end of things so that we're not having to go back and forth on recurring plans and is this approved or is this not approved. Any questions? Yes.
With the property monitoring piece, the 30, 60, 90, when does that start? The approval of the plan or the beginning of the school year? I'm new, so other people might know, but.
So, all right. I was going to say that is a very good question, and I'll think what some districts do. This is why I'm saying some districts do.
I'm a charter school.
Yeah.
All my schools have, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So a lot of times you don't get your funding until halfway through the year, right?
Yeah.
We know that's a problem. So a lot of times what districts do is they write their plan knowing that that funding is going to be spent on stuff for the coming year, not the one that they're currently using.
I got you.
So you want to actually, you want to monitor all the time what steps are being put in place. Is it working? So that way the next year when it starts around, do I need to continue with those goals and that kind of stuff? So you're monitoring in two different ways. You're monitoring your CIP, which you're writing before the school year starts, right? But then you're also going to monitor your funding application, what I'm putting my funds to, what is working and what's not working, whatever year you're putting that in place. I know that didn't really answer your question, but
It gave
you
me a
need
clearer
to,
application of what I'm.
whatever you're putting in place, you just need to make sure that you're monitoring and that it isn't working or is it not. And so you got to have that data to show that you're working or you're not.
So when do we put it in the link to you? That's the question. Like, when do you expect it in that link?
That's going to change. We got a new cycle, so that's going to change. Well, so what should be happening, some of the things that are going to be changing is instead of 30, 60, 90, it makes sense that schools are on a quarterly basis, right? So you should be monitoring on a quarterly basis. I had a district say, well, we like the 30, 60, 90, great. Use 30, 60, 90. We're not telling you you can't use 30, 60, 90. We're just saying at least quarterly you should be monitoring what you've got in place. We're going to only ask for that monitoring piece to see where things are at your 90 days. Unless the monitoring team reaches out to you and says, hey, we're going to come and we're going to meet with you and see what's going on. Did that answer your question?
So the 90-day school or the 90-day after it's been approved?
90 days school. Questions? precedent. What we're suggesting to district people is have your schools go ahead and write plans. Because even if they exit out this year, you want them to have a transition plan. You want to make sure that they're building capacity and that they're going to stay on, right? And if there's a chance that they can become CSI, you know, CSI, their annual raise is all up to the district development. So you want them to keep writing the plan. Someone mentioned earlier, it's not a bad thing, it's actually a really good thing. All your schools write plans, regardless of their agenda. And let them follow. That's good practice. So I would be writing my plan as if I'm still identified. And how am I going to continue my progress? And if you got all of your schools doing this, then they're gonna put that hat on as if I did it all. It does. But remember, this is the new year for this identification. How do you exit if you have become, if you did not exit that ACSI, you're in one school, and now you're becoming CSI, that exit criteria is different. So regardless of it being CSI, you were ACSI, now you're a CSI, you still want to go down. That's the case. If she mid-year, it's a mid-cycle, so if they already know they exited this year, you can only exit if you've already been through one cycle. Right, you can only exit that way. So you still have to have a plan in place regardless. And you still, if you're ACSI, then it's really flexible. Yes, ma'am. State funding, what happens is you have to have an approved plan. Once you have an approved plan, that gets turned over to finance and then they release those funding. You got priority, you got CSI, it's released at the same time. Yeah. We need to, yeah, let's follow up on that. And then message and I'll reach out kind of what's going on. Yeah.
With changing the progress line, is it going to be a different template for the CRP? Or are we using the same template? Sorry.
Now that Article 16 has come into play, we've been updating the CIP, we just haven't pushed it out. We were working on it with underperforming districts and other points. It's not that big of a change. What I will say, what we are working on is, y'all all heard this, and y'all all probably say, yeah, y'all been saying that for years and years and nothing's happened. We are working on what it's not going to be called one plan, consolidated continuous improvement plan, whatever. So it's going to end up sharing our health with a renewal plan, and we share with Title I plan. We're trying to get all those details nailed down so we can get that right now. Okay. We just changed those. Okay. Yes. Two more questions. So Strasser, that my father's school is CSI don't assume that. I will say that because priorities is going away, all priority schools were identified originally were ACE. What we did when the last identification cycle came around, we said, how can we help schools that? We got our hands slapped, we learned from it, sorry, but it helped those schools that became priorities not to be a second cycle ACE. So, what I in my head would say is that if you were a priority, let's assume, and I said don't assume, but let's assume that you're going to be a 10 unless you drop the program, or so that everybody is.
To the last question, so you know, like that in January, based on the designations, the schools were tiered. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's the actual ESSA plan says all schools should be tiered, so from now on, when you get out, when you are identified as CSI, we have a rubric that tells us this makes you tier 1, tier